In the forgotten woods near Roanoke, there was a family whose bloodline seemed to vanish as quickly as it appeared. No birth records, no marriage papers, almost as if they never truly existed. Yet, the whispers of their presence still haunt the valley, carved into the silence like an unhealed wound. Before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more disturbing true stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us uncover more chilling tales. The valley just outside Roanoke was the kind of place maps often ignored. Rolling hills stretched into the distance, covered in pine and oak, their shadows lengthening too quickly as the sun dipped behind the ridges. Travelers passing through claimed the air felt heavier there, as though the land itself carried secrets it was unwilling to share. Even the animals avoided the farthest edge of the woods, and those who lived nearby swore they heard faint cries drifting from the trees at night. It was in this isolated corner of Virginia that a family took root, though no one could say exactly when they arrived. Some claimed they were already there before the Civil War, living quietly in a house that looked older than time itself. Others insisted they had appeared suddenly, as if the earth itself had given them form, and then swallowed the records of their birth. Not a single town ledger, not one church baptism mentioned their name. The courthouse archives, usually stuffed with certificates and property deeds, were blank where their family should have been. Locals called them the Hollow Ones. They lived apart, rarely venturing into town except for salt, kerosene, or the occasional tool. Even then, they kept their eyes low, their voices thin and trembling. Children who caught sight of them whispered of their pale skin and uneven features, as though their faces hadn't settled into place. Rumors spread, but no one dared confront them. The family's home stood at the end of a dirt path no one else used. It leaned against the woods like a wounded animal, its roof sagging, its shutters crooked. No matter how many seasons passed, the house never seemed to rot completely. Yet it never looked alive either. Windows reflected nothing, as though the glass were painted black. When storms swept through, lightning struck nearby trees, but never the house itself, leading some to whisper that it was spared for a reason darker than luck. Visitors never stayed long. The longer you lingered near the family's land, the more the silence pressed in on you, like hands gripping your throat. And while the family never harmed anyone openly, the valley itself seemed to carry their curse. Those who spoke their name too often claimed they heard whispers in their dreams, calling them into the woods, and few who followed ever returned. As years passed, the family's presence in Roanoke grew stranger, though not in numbers. Unlike most households in the valley, which expanded with children and marriages, theirs seemed frozen in time. Generations appeared to blur together, faces resembling one another too closely, as if they had been carved from the same mold. Locals whispered that the family never married outside their bloodline, sealing themselves away in their collapsing house, clinging to traditions no one else could understand. It was not unusual for children in town to be born with freckles, crooked teeth, or birthmarks. But the children of this family carried peculiar traits: eyes that seemed to drift in different directions, hands that shook even when still, and voices that cracked like old wood when they spoke. When they came to town, people stared, trying not to, but always failing. What disturbed the villagers most wasn't what they saw, but what they didn't see. No records existed of these children being born. No midwives were ever summoned, no doctors called to the house. And yet, season after season, the family continued to appear with new faces at their table. If anyone asked questions, silence followed. If someone pressed too hard, The family vanished into their house and did not reappear for weeks. At night, the family could sometimes be heard through the valley's thin air. Not the usual sounds of life, laughter, singing, or conversation, but chanting. Low, uneven murmurs drifted from the house, as though the walls themselves carried the sound. Travelers swore they heard children reciting prayers in languages long dead, their words broken by gasps, their rhythm uneven. One farmer said he saw the glow of candles through the upper window at midnight, their shadows stretched and distorted, looking nothing like the human figures they should have been. Soon, rumors hardened into belief the family was cursed. Their isolation was not by choice but by necessity, a punishment for sins no one dared name. People crossed themselves when they walked past the overgrown path to the farmhouse. Children were warned never to go near the woods after dark, and though no proof existed, the townsfolk spoke of inbreeding, of children born in silence, their records destroyed, so that no one could trace the bloodline that was never meant to continue. The family did not deny these whispers. They simply lived as they always had, as if waiting for something, or someone, to finally expose what they had hidden for generations. Among the family, one child stood out, not for beauty nor charm, but for the unease he carried with him. He was said to be the last heir, though no one could recall his birth. No midwife attended, no official recorded his name. Yet one day, he simply appeared in the household. A boy of 5 or 6, his pale hand clutching the railing of the farmhouse porch. The townsfolk called him Elias. His skin was ghostly white, veins blue beneath the surface like cracks in porcelain. His eyes never seemed to focus. One wandered upward, while the other lingered on whatever frightened him most. When spoken to, he rarely answered, and when he did, his words came in fragments, half-sentences, unfinished thoughts, as though his mind refused to connect with the world outside. Animals feared him. Horses reared when he came near. Dogs howled from a distance, refusing to cross his path. Even the birds seemed to vanish when he stepped into the yard, leaving only silence in their place. Children from the village who dared spy on him whispered of seeing him crouched by the woods, talking to no one, his lips moving as though answering voices they could not hear. Illness clung to him like a shadow. His body was fragile, thin-boned, his chest rattling with a cough that never left. Yet despite this, he wandered outside long after midnight. A farmer swore he saw Elias walking barefoot through the frost, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream, though no sound escaped him. The boy returned to the farmhouse at dawn, his feet uncut, leaving no trace of where he had gone. The family treated him with a fearful reverence, as if he were both a blessing and a curse. His plate at the table was always fuller than the rest. His room, on the highest floor of the leaning farmhouse, glowed faintly at night, candlelight seeping through cracks though no flame should have burned. It was Elias who became the center of every whispered rumor. Some said he was proof of the family's inbreeding, an heir born broken, yet preserved as if he carried something greater than himself. Others swore he wasn't truly a child at all, but a vessel, a continuation of something older than the bloodline itself. Whatever he was, the villagers agreed on one thing: Elias would not die like an ordinary boy. It was a bitter winter when the news spread. Elias had died. The farmhouse shutters were closed for days, no movement inside, until finally, the family's patriarch appeared in town, his face pale and drawn. With trembling words, he told the magistrate that the boy had succumbed to a sudden fever. The body, he said, would be buried quickly, before the sickness could spread. But the villagers were not convinced. Elias had been seen wandering the woods just nights before, barefoot in the frost, his strange eyes wide and unblinking. How could he fall to fever so swiftly? Whispers traveled through the town faster than the snow carried on the wind. Some believed the boy had not died at all, that he had been hidden away for reasons darker than disease. Others murmured that death itself could not claim him, and the family had staged the burial to keep his secret condition from prying eyes. The funeral was hurried, taking place at dusk on the edge of the valley. Only the family attended, their lanterns flickering against the skeletal trees. No priest spoke over the grave, no hymns were sung. Instead, the coffin was lowered into the frozen ground in silence, save for the faint thud of soil striking wood. Those who watched from afar swore they saw the family members exchanging fearful glances, their eyes darting to the coffin as though expecting it to move. By morning, rumors had spread of a strange photograph taken by one of the gravediggers. In the fading light, before the lid was sealed, he claimed to have captured Elias's face on glass plate film. The picture, passed hand to hand in whispers, showed the boy lying stiff, his mouth slightly open, his eyes not fully closed. More unsettling than that was the faint impression of a shadow on the wall behind him, shaped like a hand reaching toward his chest. The villagers grew restless. They avoided the farmhouse path entirely, crossing themselves when the wind blew from that direction. If Elias was truly dead, why did the family guard his grave so closely? And if he was not, what unspeakable thing had been laid beneath the frozen earth that night? After Elias was buried, the valley did not fall into silence as the family had hoped. If anything, the nights grew heavier, pressing down on the townsfolk like an invisible hand. Dreams turned sour. Men and women who had never feared sleep began to wake, drenched in sweat, their hearts racing as though something had been chasing them through endless woods. Again and again, the same figure appeared in their nightmares. A frail boy with wandering eyes, standing just beyond reach, his lips moving though no sound escaped. Some claimed they heard his voice outside their homes, a thin whisper curling against the windows at midnight. Children woke crying, insisting that Elias had stood at the foot of their beds, pointing toward the woods. One girl was found sleepwalking in the snow, barefoot, muttering his name over and over until her parents dragged her back inside. The family, too, showed signs of unraveling. Neighbors who ventured close to the farmhouse noticed shouting from within, shadows pacing frantically across candlelit walls. The patriarch grew gaunt, his eyes hollow, as if whatever had been buried was eating him alive from the inside. At times he would walk into town, staring at nothing, his hands twitching as though he were still holding a shovel. More disturbing still were the strange sounds that began to rise from the graveyard. Several villagers swore they heard scratching beneath the soil when the wind was still, a desperate clawing that froze their blood. One gravedigger, half drunk but shaken beyond reason, confessed that he had gone to the site one night and placed his ear to the earth. What he heard, he said, was breathing, shallow, weak, but unmistakably alive. Whispers turned into fear, and fear became obsession. The townsfolk argued among themselves. Some wanted the grave dug up. Others warned that disturbing the dead would bring a curse upon them all. And through it all, the family kept their silence, locking their doors and shuttering their windows, pretending nothing was wrong. But secrets rarely remain buried, and in Roanoke, the ground itself seemed unwilling to keep hold of what had been forced beneath it. Elias, whether ghost or something far worse, had not let go of the living. It began with a rumor too strong to ignore. One of the gravediggers, unable to silence the memory of the sounds beneath the soil, rallied a few men from town. They went at night, lanterns in hand, their boots crunching on frozen ground as they marched toward Elias's resting place. Fear weighed heavier than the shovels they carried, but curiosity and dread pulled them forward. The grave was not hard to find. Even under a blanket of snow, the earth looked unsettled, as though it had shifted from within. The men exchanged uneasy glances, then began to dig. With each strike of the shovel, the silence thickened, until only the sound of their labored breaths filled the air. Finally, the coffin's lid was uncovered, the wood swollen and cracked from the damp. When they pried it open, what lay inside stole the breath from their lungs. Elias's body was twisted, his fingers raw and bloodied, splinters embedded deep beneath his nails. His face was frozen in a silent scream, lips torn where he had bitten them in desperation. The coffin lid bore deep gouges, proof that he had been alive when they buried him. But it was not only the evidence of his struggle that chilled them. His eyes were wide open, glazed yet fixed, as if locked onto something the men could not see. A faint trace of warmth clung to his skin, though no life should have remained. One villager swore he saw Elias's chest rise, just once, shallow and trembling, before sinking back into stillness. Panic seized them. Some fled, stumbling back toward town, while others stood frozen, unable to move or look away. What had they unearthed? A child buried alive by his own family, or something else entirely? The coffin smelled not only of damp wood and earth, but of something metallic, bitter, like iron and rot fused together. Word of the discovery spread quickly, despite the men's efforts to keep silent. By dawn, the town was as divided once more. Half demanded the grave be sealed again. The boy left to whatever fate had claimed him. The others whispered that Elias had never been human to begin with, and burying him had only delayed something far worse from surfacing. Whatever the truth, the family's secret had been exhumed along with him, and nothing in Roanoke would ever be the same again. After the exhumation, the town of Roanoke was never the same. Fear turned to silence, and silence hardened into legend. The family locked themselves inside their crumbling farmhouse, refusing to acknowledge what had been uncovered. Within months, the shutters closed for good, and no one was seen entering or leaving again. By the following year, the house stood abandoned, its roof sagging, windows hollow, as though the earth had reclaimed it, along with its cursed inhabitants. The official records remained blank. No new entries appeared in the courthouse ledgers, no birth certificates or death notices. It was as though the family had been erased by something greater than bureaucracy, as though history itself had refused to carry their name. Villagers stopped speaking of them openly, referring instead to the vanished ones, or simply lowering their voices when the farmhouse was mentioned. Some tried to explain what had happened in rational terms. Perhaps Elias had suffered from a rare illness that mimicked death, his shallow breathing mistaken for stillness. Perhaps the family's isolation had led to illness and deformity, which the townsfolk twisted into tales of curses. Science could account for much, but not for the dreams that still haunted those who had seen the boy's body, nor for the scratching sounds some swore they heard long after the grave had been sealed again. Others clung to folklore. They said Elias was never a child, but a vessel, a body given shape by something that did not belong to this world. The family, bound by shame or fear, had guarded the truth for generations, hiding their bloodline and erasing every trace of their existence from paper and ink. To bury him alive had not been a mistake, but a ritual, a desperate attempt to contain whatever he carried within. Years passed, and the valley grew quiet again. The farmhouse collapsed into ruin, and the woods crept over the path that once led to its door. Yet, travelers who wander too close still report uneasy silences, as if watched from the tree line. Some claim to see a pale boy standing among the shadows, lips moving in silence, his unfocused eyes fixed on those who dare to remember. And to this day, the name they carried was never truly theirs. What do you think really happened? Was it a curse, or something far more human? Comment your theory below.